Let us now begin from where we left off in our last meeting. Last Saturday we were discussing this subject of Vedanta and Dharma. We learned some of the fundamental teachings of the religion of Vedanta. Before we move on, let us quickly go over what we learned in our last class. First, Vedanta teaches that everything in creation is essentially divine. This is the first and most important truth that it teaches. Second, to discover this unity, this divinity within and manifest it fully is possible only in a human birth. And it is this unique capacity that distinguishes humans from the rest of creation. Therefore, number 3, the realization of this latent divinity, that is the highest aim of human life. And 4, those who succeed in this task and reach the goal become perfect in every sense. In every sense means in the highest sense of the term. 5, only such souls can show others the way to that blessed goal, and what they teach is religion. 6, because all great religions of the world happen to be the teachings, or they contain the teachings of such perfected souls, all of them are equally true. That is to say, they are all correct and valid paths to the divine. So, number 7, religion is not theory but something immensely practical, because these great souls that who succeeded in realizing and manifesting that inner divinity have done it in their lives and have shown us how to do it. That is why religion is not theory but immensely practical. And lastly, number 8, to work hard to actualize our unique potential. This is our highest duty as human beings. So these 8 points contain the fundamental teachings of the religion of Vedanta. From this, we get a general idea of what Vedanta means by Dharma. Today, we'll be learning something about our guides. Guides not only in our study of religion, but more importantly in our day-to-day practice of it. Who are our teachers there? Vedanta holds that in matters concerning religion and spirituality, Scripture should be our first guide. So that will be our topic for today. But before we begin with that, however, it is necessary to know something about the origin of this Vedic religion, not just for the sake of knowing it, but because it is directly related to what we are going to discuss. First of all, what is the origin of the religion of Vedanta? Buddhism was founded by Buddha, Christianity by Christ, Islam by Muhammad. So who founded Vedanta? Now, it is one of the distinctive features of the Vedic religion that it has no founder. It doesn't depend for its authority on the life story of any human being. So it's not a historical religion like Buddhism, Christianity, or Islam. Most great religions are the articulations of the teachings of their founders. Nothing wrong or inferior about that. But Vedanta has no founder. That is just the speciality of it. Then what is its authority? Its authority, Vedanta says, is eternal truth, Sanatana Satya itself. And it is the authority in the sense that each and every human being has the capacity to discover and experience that truth for oneself. So this is a very big thing, spiritual experience. But what spiritual experience do people like us have? How are we to experience eternal truth? Of course, it goes without saying that the spiritual experience of almost all of us is, non-existent or imperfect or inadequate at best. But there were, once upon a time, some extraordinary sages who possessed a certain rare insight, an insight into truth and knowledge, insight into the real nature of things. And this they had gained by long, hard tapas, austerity. With this insight gained through tapas, they were able to discover, so to say, portions of that infinite truth or knowledge. And it is the record of these extraordinary discoveries that have come down to us as the Veda. Here, I'd like to draw your attention to tapas, austerity. Generally, we people are so captivated, almost carried away by the inspiring revelations of the sages, that we almost wholly overlook the importance of tapas. Our eyes are so full of the prize that we don't know what it takes to win that prize. So what is this tapas? The Vedic sages, first of all, no doubt had extremely keen intellects. They had great powers of observation and understanding. But what is more important is, in addition to these things, they led lives of uncompromising morality, intense concentration on the goal, absolute self-control, and utter non-attachment to transitory pleasures, worldly pleasures. I repeat, in addition to intellectual acumen, they had moral discipline, intense concentration, absolute self-control, and complete renunciation. This is what tapas or austerity means. This kind of tapas is said to generate a heat. In fact, the word tapas comes from the root tap, meaning to heat or to burn. So tapas burns up the impurities of the heart and makes it pure, so pure that the heart, such a pure heart, comes to have a rare insight into the real nature of things, into the deep mysteries of the spiritual world. So, It is not that the sages propounded something new, they only discovered the truth or knowledge that exists eternally. Or it is perhaps more accurate to say that these truths were revealed to them in the depths of meditation. That is why the sages are called rishis or seers of truth. Seers, which means they saw what was revealed to them. They did not create these truths. They were not products of their minds. They did not invent anything. Swami Vivekananda points out that the spiritual laws and truths that govern our universe were there, now I'm quoting, were there before their discovery and would remain even if we forgot them. That is why the Veda is called apaurusheya, independent of human agency, something that is something not coming from human beings. It is worth noticing that in the Vedas, it is not the discoverers but the truths discovered that get more prominence. Many of these rishis didn't even care to leave their names behind. We know almost nothing about their personal lives. Because it is not the person but the ideas they stood for that appeal to the ancient Vedantins. Anyhow, what are these revelations about? What is this eternal truth and knowledge about? The briefest, simplest answer would be knowledge of God. The word Veda comes from the Sanskrit root vid, to know. It is knowledge about the nature of the ultimate reality, about creation, about soul and its destiny. It also includes knowledge of the moral and spiritual interrelationship between God, soul, and universe. Swami Vivekananda says, God and creation are both infinite and eternal. They have always existed. Throughout time, they are without beginning, without end. When that is the case, then the knowledge about them also has to be infinite and eternal. And this knowledge is what is called Veda. It is not just the books in which these truths are contained, it is not just the words in which these truths are embodied, but it is this knowledge itself that is called Veda. So it is very important to remember that it is not the words of the Veda that are eternal. What is eternal is the knowledge or the ideas that were conveyed through these words. So, Veda as knowledge of God is inexhaustible and it exists eternally in the universe. And portions of this vast mass of knowledge, of this vast infinite treasure of spiritual laws were discovered by different sages at different times, and the records of these have come down to us as the Vedic texts. So, whenever and wherever spiritual truths have been discovered, a portion of the Veda has been disclosed. Because, as we just heard, the Veda stands for the entire body of spiritual truths. That means the knowledge that is embodied in the Vedas transcends the bounds of time and space. The Vedas, the knowledge is not limited to the Indian nation. It has no geographical connotations. Anyhow, Veda primarily means knowledge of the ultimate reality. And the scriptures called Vedas are mainly records of the rishis' experiences of that reality. But in addition to this, they also contain records of their insights into the nature of and interrelationship between God, soul, and the universe. When we consider all these things, one thing stands out. We see that all of them are supersensuous. None of these truths can be determined through sense data. None of them can be determined through reasoning that is based on sensory experience. This is the reason why, as we heard in the beginning, in matters of religion and spirituality, the Vedas are our ultimate guide. Now we see the connection between Veda as the origin of religion and the Vedas as our guide in the study and practice of that religion. Now, this Veda has been divided in various ways. First of all, we have the 4 Vedas, the books, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. And each of these books, each of these Vedas consists of 4 parts. They are known as Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad. The Samhita section is a collection of mantras, a collection of prayers and hymns that are used in yajnas, sacrifices. These yajnas and sacrifices were the Vedic way of worship. They were highly important ceremonies through which the ancient Indo-Aryans communicated with the gods, with the higher powers that controlled the forces of nature. So this is what the Samhita section is about. The Brahmana section contains rules and regulations for the sacrifices. It deals with the various things related to the sacrifices, but in many places they also clarify the meaning of the mantras. So, Samhita and Brahmana were indispensable in orthodox Vedic worship. Then we come to the 3rd section, the Aranyaka section. The Aranyaka section is a development of the Brahmana. This was intended for those who had retired to the forest, where it was not possible to perform yajnas in the usual way with all the necessary articles and accessories. So, the Brahmana section prescribes symbolic worship. It describes various meditations known as upasanas that are used as substitutes for an actual sacrifice. The idea was to lift worship from the physical to the mental level, or to bring it in from outside. Then we come to the last, the Upanishad section, which is mostly the concluding portion of the Aranyakas. This is concerned with the direct experience of Brahman, which liberates one from the bondage of the relative world. So, first we have Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. And each of these Vedas consists of 4 parts: Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad. Now, this classification of the Vedas reveals something interesting. We were talking about the Vedas as our guides in spiritual matters. Now we see how true it is in several ways. The Indo-Aryans were well known for their holistic worldview. They regarded the whole of life as divine and sacred. Nothing was secular or worldly in the way we mean that. We use that word. We know how they divided the full period of human life into 4 stages: Brahmacharya, Garhasthya, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. In the same way, they also appear to have arranged the Vedas to conform to those 4 stages of life. The student, the brahmachari, studied the Samhita. He learnt the mantras, prayers and hymns that were to be used in worship. The householder followed the instructions, the injunctions as they are called, of the Brahmana, because he had to perform all these elaborate rites and rituals and sacrifices. For him, the Brahmana section applied. The forest dweller practiced contemplation according to the Aranyaka. And finally, the all-renouncing monastic, they were guided by the lofty wisdom of the Upanishad. So, the Vedas play the role of spiritual teacher in every stage of human life. That is not all. The Vedas are also divided in another, more general way, this time according to subject matter, into what are called Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. The first one, Karma Kanda, deals with karma, ritualistic actions, sacrifices, rituals, ceremonies, and such things. The purpose of the Karma Kanda is the attainment of material prosperity in this world and happiness in heaven after death. So the goal is mostly material, and that is called known as Abhyudaya, prosperity or material welfare. The second one deals with knowledge. That is why it is called Jnana Kanda. It deals with knowledge through which one is liberated from ignorance and is enabled to realize the supreme good. This is the word, this is the term they use. The supreme good contrasted with relative or material good. One is Abhyudaya, and this supreme good is called Nishreyasa. It is moksha. So it is the Upanishads that constitute this Jnana Kanda. And because they happen to appear at the end of the Vedas, or because they contain the essence or the cream of the Vedas, the Upanishads are called Vedanta. Now, these Upanishads are many in number. We even get lists with the names of 108 Upanishads. Each of the 4 Vedas contains several of them. But 11 of them are considered the most important. Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Aitareya, Taittiriya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, and Shvetashvatara. These 11 Upanishads are considered important because they contain the highest truths known to Hinduism, the highest truths declared by the Vedas. So, that much about the Vedas and Upanishads. These are our basic scriptures, our highest authorities in all matters spiritual. And together, the Vedas and Upanishads together are called Shruti. The word comes from the root shru. Shru means to hear. It means that which has been heard or communicated from the beginning. It refers to the sacred sounds or words heard by the rishis, sacred knowledge orally transmitted by teacher to disciple from generation to generation. Because their origin is not human but divine, they are our main guides in the field of religion and spirituality. Then we have a number of other guides, secondary authorities that are based on the Shrutis. We have roughly half a dozen of them. But for a moment, please excuse me. I'd like to have a sip of water. So, what are these half a dozen auxiliary scriptures? I list them slowly. Smritis, Darshanas, Puranas, Itihasas, Tantras, and Agamas. So we have 6. Smriti, Darshana, Purana, Itihasa, Tantra, and Agamas. Smritis, very generally put, they are law books. Darshanas are schools of thought or philosophy. Purana is mythology. Itihasa is history or legend. The Tantras are the scriptures for the Shaktas, those who worship God as energy, Shakti. And the Agamas are the Shaiva and Vaishnava scriptures. They are the scriptures of followers or devotees of Vishnu and Shiva. And all these together, including the Shruti, make up the body, the total body of the Hindu scriptures. The Sanskrit word for scripture is Shastra. It comes from the root Shas. Shas means to rule, to govern. So Shastra is that which governs. In the context of Hinduism, Shastra governs not only an individual's religious life, but also the social life of the larger community. Because, as I said, in the Vedic view of life, everything was spiritual, nothing was secular. So these scriptures are not just collections of revelations that one has to accept and agree with without question, nor are they a set of rules that only tell us what we should do inside when we are inside the temple. The speciality of the scriptures of the Vedic religion is that they regulate our life in all its aspects so that we may advance spiritually towards perfection. This is their aim and purpose, to lead everybody from where they are, this is important, from wherever they are, to lead everybody towards spiritual perfection. That is why the Vedic religion has such a wide variety of secondary or supporting scriptures. They do the work of bringing subtle, abstract spiritual truths that are declared in the Shruti within everybody's range of understanding. Then each class of scripture has its own way of doing it. But whatever their approach, the goal is always the same. So now we know, we just acquainted ourselves with the names of this half a dozen classes of scriptures. Of these, first comes what is known as Smriti. And as distinct from the Shruti, Smriti is what is only remembered. Smarana means remembering. What is only remembered and handed down in writing by human authors. Whereas the Shruti was never set down in writing, it was orally transmitted. And they were not of human authorship. So Smritis are that body of scriptural texts that have come into existence through human authorship. But then they also derive their authority from the Shruti, from the Vedas. And the object of the Smriti is to regulate personal and social life, to establish systems, laws, embodying the principles of the Shruti. So the laws for regulating the individual and society from time to time are codified in the Smriti. Now, what is a code? We can think about codes of law. A code is a set of moral principles or rules of behavior that are generally accepted by society. It's a system of laws or formally written rules that state how people in a social group should behave. This is what the Smritis in their aspect of Dharma Shastras are. You may have heard the names of Manu, Yajnavalkya, Parashara. They were great sages who compiled such manuals of the Vedic way of life. And these manuals are named after them. Manu Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti. These Smritis deal with dharma or the duty of different classes of people. That is why these law books are also known as Dharma Shastras. From these books, people of their time learned how they had to spend their entire life. So the books give detailed instructions regarding the duties of a person according to their class, called Varna, according to their class and station in life, which is called Ashrama. Together they are called Varnashrama Dharma. How one should conduct oneself at different periods of one's life. What are the special duties that fall on one as a responsible member of a community, a particular community. In addition to these things, the Smritis also describe all the various ceremonies that have to be performed in the household. Daily ceremonies, occasional ceremonies, ritual ceremonies, special ones, and what penances should be performed in case a person has committed an act of sin. The Smritis deal with all these things, many such things. How a king should rule, how his ministers should administer the law, how trade and commerce have to be conducted. Even what standards of hygiene and sanitation should be maintained within a social group. Even these things are dealt with in the Smritis. So, in short, the Smritis give the do's and don'ts of life. They prescribe certain things and prohibit certain others. And again, the one purpose of all this, as we have already heard, is to gradually purify the mind and help a person progress step by step towards perfection. But now we have to note one important thing. These do's and don'ts are related to prevalent social conditions. And we all know that social conditions are bound to change. People's ideas change. New factors come into play in social life which bring in new customs. Then political institutions grow. What happens is when these things occur, then some old laws become obsolete and make place for new conventions. And these new conventions, in course of time, become established as laws. So, as and when social circumstances changed, necessary alterations had to be made in the laws, and new Smritis had to be compiled by the sages according to the needs of the times. If we study the history of Vedic religion, we see that this Hindu society has always been a living organism, and its law codes have always been flexible. It is not that the rules once formed were set forever. Nobody could change them. It is not like that. The religion of the Vedas, most certainly, it may surprise many of you, but the religion of the Vedas most certainly allows the introduction of new laws. Not only that, what is even more surprising to hear is that it allows even the production of new scriptures. Otherwise, Hinduism would have been a dead religion. Swami Vivekananda observes in one place that the real test of life in any organism lies in the response it gives to the environment. So, if Hindu society at any time fails to respond to the needs of the hour, if it fails to follow the lead of its living sages, if it does not have the courage to march on, to give new form to the eternal principles declared in the Vedas and Upanishads, Swamiji said, it will surely perish, and Hindus will also go the way of the ancient Greeks and Romans. But as a matter of fact, Hindu society has changed considerably over the last couple of centuries. But it is also a matter of fact that it is slowly, even though it is not perceptible to us, it is slowly adjusting itself to the needs of the present time. Only these adjustments are not yet properly codified. They are not yet made authoritative. That's all. So, time is perhaps right for a fresh new Smriti. We don't know who is to say. Now, after the Shrutis and Smritis, the next in the hierarchy of scriptures are the Darshanas. The word Darshana comes from the root Drish. Drish means to see, to view. These Darshanas, strictly speaking, are schools of thought. That means they are nothing but so many different viewpoints from which the eternal truths of the Vedas are looked at. So this is how you could define the word darshana. But though they are schools of thought, the books in which these doctrines, the doctrines of these schools of these philosophical schools are explained, they are also called darshanas. It is just like the Vedas. The knowledge of God is called Veda. At the same time, the books or the words in which that knowledge is contained is also called Veda. In the same way, darshana means a point of view, but it also refers to the book in which these points of view are contained. So, we have again half a dozen darshanas: Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. 6 of them. But sometimes they are clubbed together in pairs because of the similarities in their doctrines. And then we have 3 groups of 2 each: Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Vedanta. And each of these darshanas, now I mean the books known as darshanas, each of these darshanas consists of a number of sutras or aphorisms in which the theory of a particular school is given out. The doctrine is set out in the form of brief formulae. And as we know, these sutras are usually so brief that they can't be easily understood. So, in time, authoritative commentaries came to be written on these sutras. And these commentaries, in their turn, were followed by sub-commentaries, explanations, notes. This is how philosophical literature grew. Now the question is, are all these 6 darshanas equally authoritative? Those who have studied the history of philosophy, they say each darshana, each school of philosophy has had its day. Each of them has enjoyed popularity and acceptance at some time or other. But it is only Vedanta that still holds the field, because Vedanta is the only school of thought that has proved to be the most satisfactory. It is the most satisfactory system of philosophy that could be developed out of the Vedas and Upanishads. So, I would like to conclude today's class here, but before we wind up, I'd like to once quickly recapitulate what we just learned. Our topic today was the scriptures of the Vedic religion. Broadly, these scriptures are grouped as Shrutis and Smritis. In fact, Smritis sometimes are referred to the entire group of other half a dozen scriptures other than the Shruti. So first we have Shrutis, then the Smritis. The Shrutis contain the Vedas and Upanishads. Each of the Vedas is classified in different ways. First, as the four books, Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva. And each of these books is further divided into four parts called Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishad. And then there is this classification of the Shruti as Jnanakanda and Karmakanda depending on their subject matter. Then we come to the Smritis. And if we further subdivide the Smritis, which are mainly law books, then we have, including the Smritis, Darshanas, Itihasas, Puranas, Tantras, and Agamas. So, this is, we got a brief, but I hope informative introduction to the subject of the scriptures. But we will continue with this subject in our next meeting next Saturday afternoon.